Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a really cool topic today,
Yeah.
design ethics.
Ooh, yes.
We've got a whole bunch of articles and research lined up,
Sounds good.
and we're going to uncover how design,
Yeah,
it's not just about making things look nice.
right.
It's really about shaping our world, sometimes in ways we don't even realize.
Yeah, I think we often think of design as just,
Right.
like you said, aesthetics, making things look pretty.
Hmm.
But every single choice that a designer makes
Yeah.
impacts us. It can be the shape of a doorknob.
Wow.
It could be the layout of a website.
Yeah.
All of those things have like this ripple effect on how we interact with the world, how we behave, even how we think.
It's true. And it makes you realize that designers, they actually have a ton of responsibility.
Huge.
I mean, think about something like facial recognition. It's everywhere these days.
Absolutely.
But there are so many concerns about bias and misuse
yeah.
or social media algorithms. I mean,
Right.
are they serving us or are they just manipulating us?
That's exactly the kind of stuff that design ethics is trying to deal with.
Okay.
It's about encouraging designers to think beyond just like the function of what they're creating
Right.
and consider the impact, good and bad.
On individuals.
Yeah, on individuals and as a whole, on society.
I see. So it's not just about rules. It's about this mindset when you're approaching design.
Mindset, for sure.
But how do you put that into practice? Like, how does someone actually do design ethics?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
There are tons of tools and frameworks out there
Okay.
that designers can use to think ethically.
Uh-huh.
One of the big ones is stakeholder analysis.
Stakeholder analysis. What's that?
I mean, it's a simple idea, but it can be really powerful.
Okay.
It's all about identifying the people, the groups
Right.
that could be affected by a design.
So not just the person using it.
No, not just the intended user, exactly.
So, for example, like if you're designing a ride-sharing app,
Okay.
it's not just about the passengers or the drivers. Yeah.
Exactly. You've got to think about the impact on the city,
Wow.
city planners,
Oh, wow.
local businesses, people who live there.
Yeah,
You know what? If there's increased traffic or changes to the neighborhood.
that's a good point.
So if you consider all those different people,
Yeah.
it helps the designers make choices that are more inclusive.
So it helps avoid all those unintended consequences.
Yeah, hopefully.
But wouldn't that make the whole design process so much more complex and take way more time?
It can add some complexity for sure,
Yeah.
but it's worth it.
I guess so.
Think of it this way. It's way easier to address potential problems at the beginning
Yeah,
than try to fix them after it's all done
that's true.
when the stakes are way higher.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Much easier to fix it at the beginning.
Are there any other, tools or anything that are useful for ethics?
Another really important one is something called bias identification and mitigation. This is especially important when it comes to AI.
Right.
Because even seemingly neutral choices that designers make
Yeah.
can just perpetuate biases that are already out there.
Like, I was reading about how some facial recognition algorithms
Right.
are worse at identifying people with darker skin.
That's a perfect example.
And that's clear bias. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It often comes down to the data that's used to train those algorithms.
Right.
If the data isn't diverse,
Uh-huh.
the algorithm's going to be biased.
So it's really on the designers then
Yeah.
to fix that, to make sure that,
To look for it.
yeah, the data's okay.
Actively look for those biases and address them.
Wow, it sounds like a lot to think about.
It is.
What are some of the biggest challenges that designers face when they're trying to be ethical?
I think one of the big ones is that defining ethical can be subjective.
Yeah,
And it varies across cultures.
that's true.
Like, what's okay in one place
Yeah,
might be totally not okay somewhere else.
like data privacy. Yeah, that's a big deal in Europe.
Yeah,
But other parts of the world, people don't care as much.
exactly. You got it.
So designers need to be aware of all that
Right.
and think about where their designs are going to be used.
All the different contexts, yeah.
That's hard,
It is. It can be really tricky.
especially if you're designing for the whole world.
Global audience. Yep.
So then how do you deal with all that?
Well, I think it's crucial to get different perspectives,
Oh.
talk to people from all sorts of backgrounds,
Yeah.
and then be really open about your design choices.
Like explain why you did what you did.
Exactly.
Nice.
So that people can see how their values are being taken into account.
So it's not enough to just make good choices.
Right.
You have to tell everyone what you did and why.
You have to communicate it. Yeah.
And be open to feedback.
Absolutely.
So that brings us to accountability.
Yeah,
Right?
it's huge.
Designers have to take responsibility for their work
Totally.
and be willing to make changes if things go wrong.
100%, yeah.
I bet that's tough,
That is.
especially when you have so many different people involved
All those stakeholders.
with their own priorities and opinions.
Right.
How do you balance all that?
It is a balancing act, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think one thing that helps is to set really clear ethical guidelines from the start.
Oh,
What are your non-negotiables?
yeah.
What are the values you won't compromise on?
Yeah.
It gives you a framework to make those tough decisions.
It's like a roadmap.
Yeah, something to refer back to.
Do you know of any, companies that are doing ethics really well?
Oh, yeah. There are some great examples out there.
Like who?
One that comes to mind is this company that's developing AI for medical devices.
Oh, wow.
They've built ethics into everything they do from the very beginning.
That's amazing.
They even have a whole team
Wow.
dedicated to making sure their algorithms aren't biased.
So they're being proactive about it.
Yeah, totally.
Not just saying they care about ethics.
Right, it's part of their DNA.
So it can be done.
It can. It takes effort, though.
That's encouraging to hear.
It is?
I guess it's a reminder that even though it's hard,
Yeah.
it's not impossible to do ethics in design.
Absolutely not. The more we talk about it,
Right.
the more aware people become, the better designs we'll get.
It's not just up to designers, though, right?
Right.
We all have a part to play
We do.
as the people using these designs.
Glad you brought that up.
What can we do?
It's super important. It shows that this is a conversation for everyone.
Okay.
As users, we have a ton of power.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
We can support the companies that are prioritizing ethics.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
can demand transparency, and we can use our voices to ask for change.
That's empowering.
It is, right.
It makes me feel like we can make a difference.
You can?
But where do we start? I mean, design is everywhere.
It is.
How can we assess everything we interact with?
It can be overwhelming.
For sure.
But I think step one is to start asking questions. Like, when you're using an app or a website, take a second.
Okay.
Think about who designed it.
Right.
What were their goals?
Huh.
How is it affecting you?
Yeah.
How is it affecting the world?
So basically, be more aware of the design in our lives.
Yeah. Start seeing the world through an ethical lens.
You know, the more we talk about this,
Yeah.
the more I realize how much I just didn't even think about before.
That's the power of awareness.
This has been a really great start to our dive today.
Oh, it has.
I'm already looking at the world differently.
I love that.
But before we go any further,
Yeah.
I want to dive into some specific examples.
Let's do it.
You know, the source material mentions a few
Yeah.
that are really relevant. Facial recognition,
Yeah.
social media algorithms,
Uh-huh.
and then there's this thing called Compass
Right.
that's used in the criminal justice system.
Okay, good examples.
Where should we start?
Let's start with facial recognition.
Okay.
I mean, it's everywhere, but there are obviously some serious ethical questions
Yeah.
about how it's being used.
I'd love to hear your take on it.
It's a complicated issue. We could talk about it for hours,
Really?
but I think one of the most important things to consider is the potential for bias.
Right. We talked about that a little bit already.
Yeah.
But I'd love to, hear more about how that bias gets into facial recognition systems in the first place.
Yeah.
And then, what are the implications of that?
So facial recognition, it uses algorithms, right?
Uh-huh.
And they're trained on huge data sets,
Okay.
tons and tons of faces.
Right.
If those data sets aren't diverse, like if they don't represent everyone,
Yeah.
the algorithm can make inaccurate predictions that are biased.
So, if an algorithm is mainly trained on images of, say, white people,
Right.
it might not be as good
Exactly.
at recognizing people of color.
Yeah, it might have a harder time accurately identifying people with darker skin tones.
And that has real-world consequences.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when you think about law enforcement using it.
Yeah, for identification.
There have been cases of wrongful arrests
That's right.
because of these systems.
Yeah, it highlights how important it is for designers to address this bias.
Wow. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, it is.
It makes you think about how crucial it is for designers to really work on this.
Yeah.
To not just be aware of the bias, but actually try to fix it.
You got to mitigate it, yeah.
Are there things that they can do
Absolutely.
to make facial recognition more fair?
Yeah, one really important thing is making sure the data sets they use are diverse.
Right, like we were talking about.
Exactly. You want images of people from different backgrounds, ages, genders.
So that it's trained on all kinds of people.
Right, the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
Another thing is algorithmic auditing.
What's that?
It's basically like having independent experts come in
Okay.
and check the algorithm for bias.
So it's like a second opinion to make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
Check and balance.
But even with all that, isn't it still hard to totally get rid of bias?
Yeah. It's really tough.
I mean, algorithms are designed by people,
Right.
and people have their own biases.
That's a really crucial point.
Yeah.
Even the best designers, even if they have good intentions, they can still accidentally introduce bias.
Yeah.
That's why diversity is so important on design teams.
Oh, I see. So if you have a bunch of different people.
Right, with different backgrounds, different experiences.
Yeah.
It's less likely that one person's bias will, like, take over.
That makes sense. More perspectives.
Yeah, exactly.
What about, besides bias,
Okay.
what are some other ethical things to think about with facial recognition?
Privacy is a big one.
Oh, right.
Facial recognition, I mean, it can be really invasive.
Right, right.
Imagine, like, your every move being tracked by cameras that know who you are.
That's kind of scary.
It raises serious questions about our freedom. Yeah, it reminds me of those, like, dystopian movies.
Yeah, right.
Where everyone's being watched all the time.
Big Brother.
Yeah.
Is there a way to, like, balance the good parts of facial recognition
Right.
with protecting people's privacy?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
It's a tough balance.
Yeah.
Some people think we need stricter rules.
About using it.
Yeah, especially for law enforcement.
Go.
Others think the focus should be on, new technology that protects privacy.
Oh, interesting.
Like blurring faces in public or
Right.
making sure you have to give consent before your face can be scanned.
So finding ways to use it responsibly.
Yeah.
Without, like, giving up our rights.
That's it.
This keeps coming up.
Yeah.
This idea of balancing, the new exciting technology with making sure it's ethical.
Absolutely. It's not about rejecting technology altogether. It's about using it in a way that aligns with our values, with the common good.
That's a good point.
Speaking of finding that balance, I think it's time to move on to another example.
Yeah.
Social media algorithms.
Okay, that's a good one.
I mean, most of us use social media every day, right?
Yeah.
But we rarely stop and think about the algorithms that are, running the show.
Yeah, how do they even work?
So basically, they're designed to filter the content you see
Okay.
and personalize it.
So it's not just, like, a random feed.
Right. They're looking at your past behavior, your interests, your connections,
Okay.
all sorts of stuff.
To figure out what I like.
Yeah, to predict what's going to keep you engaged.
So if I'm, like, always liking posts about, I don't know, gardening or something,
Yeah.
the algorithm will show me more gardening stuff.
Exactly. It's like a personalized newspaper just for you.
That sounds good.
It does, right?
Yeah.
But here's the problem. It can create what we call filter bubbles.
Filter bubbles? What are those?
So basically, you're only seeing information that confirms what you already believe. Like, you're in an echo chamber, you never see anything that challenges your views.
So it's like it's reinforcing my biases.
Yeah, exactly, instead of helping you see different perspectives.
Wow.
And that can be really polarizing for society.
Like making people less understanding of each other.
Right, it's harder to empathize with people who think differently.
And it's all because of these algorithms.
Yeah, it's part of it, for sure.
And that's not even all of it, right?
Right.
What else is there?
Some people argue that these algorithms are designed to be addictive.
Okay.
Like they want to keep you hooked on your phone.
Yeah, I can see that.
They're constantly feeding you content, whether it's good for you or not.
So it's like, it's not even about what's best for me.
Right.
It's about keeping me scrolling.
Yeah. Engagement is king.
That's kind of disturbing.
It is a little bit, yeah.
So then, like, who's to blame?
That's a good question.
Is it the designers? The companies?
Or is it us, the users?
Do we have some responsibility?
Those are the tough questions. There's no easy answer.
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure, we need more transparency from these companies.
About how the algorithms work.
Yeah. What data they use, how they're shaping our experience.
I mean, that makes sense, but
Yeah.
is that even possible?
It's hard. These tech companies are pretty secretive.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible.
Okay.
There are more and more people demanding algorithmic accountability.
Oh, cool.
And some lawmakers are even considering regulations.
So there's hope.
There is. People are starting to demand more control.
And we do have some power as users, right?
Absolutely.
We can be more mindful
Yeah.
about how we're using social media.
You got it?
We can look for different viewpoints.
Right.
And we can limit the stuff that's, like, not good for us.
Those are all great things you can do.
So it's not just about blaming the companies.
Right.
We have a part to play, too.
It's about recognizing that we're not just passive consumers. We can shape our own experience.
This has been so interesting.
It has.
I never really thought about social media like this before.
It's a whole new way of looking at it.
It's like Something as simple as scrolling through my feed
Yeah.
can actually have a big impact.
It can, on you and on the world.
We need to be more careful
We do, more thoughtful.
about how we're using these things.
Absolutely.
Our source material mentions another example that I want
Yeah.
to talk about.
Let's hear it.
Compass.
Okay.
I have to admit, I still don't really get what that is.
Okay, COMPASS stands for Correctional Offender Management Profiling for Alternative Sanctions. It's a mouthful.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
So it's a software program
Okay.
used in the criminal justice system
Okay.
to predict if someone's going to commit another crime.
Like if they're going to reoffend.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
So judges use it to help them make decisions about sentencing, parole.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, huge responsibility.
It analyzes all sorts of data, right?
Yeah, things like criminal history, age, education, even their social connections.
And then it gives them a risk score.
Yep, that's it.
Hmm.
It sounds helpful in theory, right?
I guess, but
But there are definitely some ethical concerns.
like what?
Bias, for one.
Oh, no, not I guess.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
How so?
Studies have shown that COMPASS is more likely to flag Black defendants as high risk.
Oh, wow.
Even if their actual behavior doesn't match up.
So it's basically saying Black people are more likely to commit crimes,
Yeah, that's what it suggests.
even if they haven't done anything.
It's perpetuating those existing biases we were talking about.
That's really messed up.
It is. It's a major issue.
I wonder how many people have been affected by that.
It's hard to say, but it's definitely a valid concern.
Yeah.
And it's sparked a lot of debate about using algorithms in the justice system.
What are people saying?
Some people say these tools are just inherently biased,
Okay.
and we should get rid of them completely.
What?
Others say they can be useful, but we need to use them carefully and have safeguards.
So is that balance again?
Yeah, always that balance.
How do we use these things without being unfair?
We need to be asking the right questions.
Like what?
What data are we using? How are we dealing with bias? Who's responsible for the decisions being made?
Those are big questions.
They are, and we're just starting to grapple with them.
This whole conversation about design ethics,
Yeah,
it's really made me think.
I'm glad.
It's incredible how much power designers have
Yeah,
to change the world in good ways and bad.
it's a double-edged sword.
It makes you realize we all have to think about this,
We do.
about the ethics of design.
Whether we're creating it or consuming it.
It's a shared responsibility.
It is.
We all have to work towards a more ethical design future.
Exactly, that's the goal.
And speaking of shaping that future,
Okay.
let's talk about what we can do as individuals. And speaking of shaping that future, let's talk about what we can do as individuals
Okay.
to promote ethical design. We've talked about what designers can do,
Right.
but what about the rest of us?
It's a great question. You know, it shows why design ethics is important for everyone,
Right.
not just designers. Because every time we choose a product or use a service or interact with a platform,
Right.
we're supporting a specific design approach.
So like we're voting with our choices.
Exactly. We can choose to support the companies that are, prioritizing ethics,
That makes sense.
being transparent about their choices,
Right.
working to mitigate bias and protect privacy.
So we can choose the good guys
Yeah.
and not support the bad guys.
And not support the companies that are doing shady stuff or putting profits over people.
It's like using our wallets to make a statement.
That's a good way to put it.
But how do we even know which companies are actually ethical?
That's the tricky part. There's a lot of greenwashing out there.
Greenwashing.
Yeah, like companies saying they're all about sustainability and social responsibility,
Right.
but they're not actually doing it.
So it's not enough to just take their word for it
You got to look beyond the marketing and do your research.
on every company.
Well, at least the ones you care about, the ones you're spending your money on.
Okay.
Look at their track record. Are they walking the talk?
What does that even mean?
Like, are they actually doing what they say they're doing?
Oh,
Are they engaging with different stakeholders, being transparent about their supply chains?
that's a lot to think about.
It is, but it's worth it if you want to support ethical companies.
So it's like being a responsible consumer, doing your homework.
That's a great way to think about it.
What about, are there other things we can do?
Aside from just choosing the right companies.
Yeah, to encourage ethical design,
Hmm.
like in general.
One of the most powerful things we can do is speak up, advocate for change.
Like how?
We can write to our representatives and push for stronger laws around data privacy, algorithms.
Oh, like regulations and stuff?
Exactly.
Really?
We can support organizations that are fighting for a more just and equitable tech landscape.
Those are good ideas.
And just talking to people about these issues, raising awareness,
Just starting the conversation.
It all helps.
It's like we have to work together to make a difference,
That's it. Collective action.
to make sure design is used for good.
That's the goal. Design that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
This whole conversation has been amazing.
I'm glad you think so.
It's made me realize how important design is,
It is. It's everywhere.
and it's given me hope that we can actually change things.
We can. It's a journey, but we're all in this together.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Me too. I really hope our listeners got something out of it.
I hope so too. I hope it's made them think about the designs they see every day.
Right, like with a new perspective.
Exactly, and ask themselves, what kind of world do I want to live in?
And what can I do to help create that world?
That's the question we should all be asking.
That's it for this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning.
And keep diving deep.
See ya.